just in the natural process of women getting older, in their 40s, ovaries, as you say, starting to shut down for retirement. Of course, with different women, it will happen at different times. Your signals are changing, your hormones are changing, you are becoming insulin resistant. So, of course, the diet that worked for you in your 30s may no longer work for you in your 40s. There's nothing wrong with you, right? A lot of women get frustrated with the weight gain, but I think through that lens, it's like, well, yeah, maybe I need to change my diet. Maybe, for example, a lower carb diet may be brilliant in my 40s. Maybe I didn't need it in my 30s, but I now need it in my 40s.
That's right. That's right. And I love your heart, because this is the burden we need to take off of women. There is so much guilt and shame around our relationship with food. And what we're seeing in the 40s is there's these dramatic body shifts. And I've experienced it myself. I'm 53 and I've just gone through that whole process. And you don't understand yourself. You're like, for me, it was, I love to work out. I was doing a lot of paleo. I was, really, and then I'd moved into the ketogenic diet. I had found fasting. I was like trying to play with all these tools because I felt like somebody hijacked my body. Like I was not able to use those old tools anymore. I needed a new set of tools, and I need to learn how to cycle them like I teach in the book. But what happens, I don't know if you've seen this statistic, 45 to 55 is the most common decade for women to commit suicide. Now, why is that? There is a hormonal decline that is changing our brains and our bodies, and we are not understanding ourselves. And we as a society are not talking about this hormonal shift. So the 45-year-old woman is depressed. She's not sleeping. She's gaining weight. She's having all these new health challenges, but she's throwing the old strategies at them that are no longer working, not realizing that something in her lifestyle has to shift.
Yeah. And not only that, the medical profession, and, I've been part of it for over 2 decades now, we're just not trained that well on the things that you're talking about. So if a woman does go, you know what, I need some help here, often they'll end up with a healthcare professional, maybe a doctor, maybe someone else. And maybe, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here, right? I do think medical professionals are trying their best, but I just imagine 20 years ago, I wouldn't have known what to do for that woman. I genuinely, I would have done my training and passed my exams, but 20 years ago, I just would not have known. And therefore, that woman then goes out thinking, oh, well, the doctors can't help me. Or a common one, which you will have heard, I've heard a million times, is my doctor tried to put me on an antidepressant.
That's right.
I mean, that's the common one. And at that point, women feel unheard. They feel unseen. They've lost faith in the medical profession, quite understandably. And so this is really, really important. That suicide statistic was startling when I heard that. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons I think we need to take this super, super seriously. Okay, so we've covered the sort of 35 plus. In your 40s, the perimenopausal period of time. What about post-menopause? Because after the periods have stopped, I know you've said before that after menopause, fasting gets easier. And I think you've also said that the post-menopausal group of women are the group that needs fasting the most. So I wonder if you could explain that for us, please.
Yeah, oh, it's such a good point. So what has surprised me in educating the world on these concepts is how many women go through menopause and symptoms stick. So I've seen women that are 10 years into their post-menopausal journey, and they still can't get rid of the weight that they accumulated during the process. They still have hot flashes. They're still struggling with mood changes. And so it's fascinates me that even though they don't have a cycle anymore, those issues are still lingering around. And the reason for that is they didn't change their lifestyle when they went through the process. So they can change it now. They can use what we're talking about as a tool to make sure that their age appropriate hormones are at the highest level possible. Now, I'm not talking about bringing your estrogen or progesterone levels back to your 25-year-old self. That's not what we're talking about. But when we are 55 and 65, we need to make sure that we keep estrogen and progesterone at her peak, and even testosterone. Otherwise, we start to slip into more of these categories of dementia and Alzheimer's, especially if there's a genetic profile for that. So when we start to use fasting, especially the longer fasts, we can clean up that estrogen system for a postmenopausal woman. That's going to make her hot flashes going to go away. That's going to make sure that she starts to lose weight. And that's going to make sure that she cognitively stays at her best. But then she also needs to know to step out of fasting to mind progesterone. So we can have her go into maybe 1 day a week because she's not following necessarily a monthly cycle. She could follow a weekly cycle, and 1 day a week, 2 days a week, she doesn't fast. She brings her carbs up. She leans into the hormone feasting foods so that she can bring progesterone up, so she can stop being anxious, so that she can sleep a lot better. So we still have to mind these hormones at that phase, but we don't have a monthly cycle to look at it from.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about this, 28, 30-day type cycle. But of course, postmenopausally, that doesn't apply anymore. And so, right. But I still think what you've been talking about, as you've just mentioned, is highly relevant for this postmenopausal group. I know you've got a variety of different techniques for postmenopausal women. One, I think, was the 5-1-1. What's the 5-1-1?
Yes. Yep. So 5-1-1 is where 5 days a week she does her favorite length fast. So let's say it's like 15 hours, 16 hours. And in that time, I really recommend she does more of a low carb style of eating. I call it, my version of keto is something I call keto biotic. I actually bring the carb level up a little bit more than most keto diets because I think that's more appropriate for women. And I encourage women to lean into more of the nature's carbs, the leafy greens to be able to help. So those 5 days a week, she would do maybe a 15-hour fast with the keto biotic diet. 1 day a week, I want her to stretch her fast. In fact, I would encourage her to try to get to that 24 hours so she can create some gut repair to break down the estrogen that she needs for her brain. And then 1 day a week, she steps out of fasting. She does more hormone feasting foods. And she looks at how does she bring progesterone up. So that's a typical 5-1-1 for the postmenopausal woman.
I love that. So instead of thinking 28, 30-day cycle, think more about a 7-day pattern. What about younger women? Because in the sort of under 35 age group, let's say, and maybe the under 40 age group where women are, maybe they've got a regular cycle, but many women don't. Or what about women who have taken birth control and then come off birth control pills? I mean, there can be all kind of hormonal havoc going on there. Yeah. I know we've mentioned the cycle, so people can, of course, follow the principles that we've already outlined if they do have a cycle. Anything for younger women to pay attention to in particular? And what about those younger women who don't have regular cycles? How might they approach your work?
Yeah. And again, this has shocked me how many women don't have a cycle. So the first thing I want to point out about our cycles is we tend to look at them as, something that's we don't want to deal with. It's like, I'm going to feel this way. It's a hassle. But what I want to say is when we shed blood, it is a version of a detox. So we need that menstrual cycle. It is how your body is removing toxins from your system. It is a beautiful mechanism that has been born into us that we should cherish. The fact that younger women are not having regular cycles should be of great concern to all of us. So now, having said that, we can start to bring back a healthy cycle by following what we've been talking about. And in the book, I call it the fasting cycle. We actually have an app now where you can go in and you can put your day of your cycle in and track your symptoms, and it'll tell you the best foods and fasting length. We even go into nutrients that you can use. So that's available for women. But you can either choose your own length fast, you can choose your own food styles according to how I teach it in the book. Or I did put a 30-day fasting reset in there where you just map it to your cycle and it'll start to balance out those hormones. But if you look at the majority of women that are 25, they're high stress. A lot of them are eating the wrong foods. And every single month, they're working against their hormones. And so all of a sudden now we're seeing a rise in infertility. We're seeing a rise in PCOS. And all at the root of these hormonal challenges is a woman not living in flow with her hormones. And that is what we can change to dramatically change the needle on those type of situations occurring.
So let's say for a 28-year-old young lady who is not on the pill. A lot of people, I don't even realize when they're taking the pill, they're not really having periods. Yes, there's bloods and it's happening at a certain time, but actually that is artificially stimulated through the pill. It's not a natural period.
Right.
So for women who are not on birth control pills and they don't have their period, they just don't know when it's going to come. Some of them are not having it at all. Obviously, extreme weight loss will do that. But let's say they're not super low weight.
Right.
Could they just follow your 30-day cycle? And if they don't know where they are, they don't know where day 1 is, they don't know where day 10 is, they're just like, okay, well, why don't I just start? Would simply starting and living in accordance with day 1 to 10 power, day 10 to 15 manifestation, and changing the fasts, changing the stress, changing the exercise, changing the inputs to the body, is that going to help them? And is it going to help them bring their periods back?
Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free. And it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool. And it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's going to do. And this actually shocked me because I came up with this concept, the fasting cycle that we've been talking about. And I started to use it on myself in my perimenopausal years. And then I started to use it on my patients. And then I expanded it out to the social media audience that was following my teachings. And what really surprised me was how many women within 30 to 90 days could bring their cycles back into sync just by following what we're talking about. And beyond that, the other surprising effect, and this is just me observing, millions of women by now who have gone through the fasting cycle, is that when women were infertile, that because they don't have a regular cycle, that's a problem if you're trying to get pregnant. So what we started to see was that fertility went up, and within 90 days, a lot of women that have spent years trying to get pregnant all of a sudden became pregnant. So to your point, it's that simple. If you are not seeing a regular cycle, just go to that fasting reset and do day 1 through day 30. If you do that for 90 days, you will sync yourself back up. That is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I really want people to take heed of that. If there's someone, a man or a woman listening, and you have a daughter of that age who's struggling, please send them this conversation. Send them Mindy's book, send them Mindy's YouTube channel. If you've got a friend, share this with them, because I can't emphasize enough, Mindy, how much your work has touched me, because as I've already mentioned, I think the implications go far beyond improving that individual woman's health. Yeah, sure, great. Improve that woman's health. But what does that mean? Well, who are the women in society? What are they doing? They're usually the nurturing ones. They're the ones who are looking after people. They're often the caregivers. They're the mothers. They're the grandmothers, right? They're the people who carry babies, which is how the population keeps going. If you look at it through that level, helping women to feel better, to have more energy, to have more vibrancy, to have better memory, cognition, better gut health, the implications are huge.
They're huge. Yeah. I thank you for saying that. We have to pause at this moment in human history and ask ourselves how we're taking care of women's health. There was an article that went out in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago around menopause and how we have a cultural acceptance of women's suffering. And what we're doing as women is that we're internalizing that. We're creating more guilt, more shame, because we're not thriving in this patriarchal healthcare system. And when we look at what women need from a healthcare system, is we need to bring in all the nuance of what we're talking about. We need to bring in self-love. We need to bring in doctors that have compassion for us. We need to understand ourselves and where these hormones are coming in and out. And we have to stop trying to do everything from how we eat to how we work out to the medications we take at the same as men, because we are massively different, and we have been we've been taught to do it the way that we teach men, and that is what needs to stop in order for us to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation is already going to change. It's already going to change how I approach things in my own personal life, not only professional life, but personal life. I can see how it would make me more aware, let's say with my own wife, for example, how I can be more supportive potentially at different times. I'd like to think of myself as quite enlightened and progressive, but, I'm learning things from your work that I wasn't that aware of, which now that I am, I can make changes. So on a personal level, I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
What do you think people get wrong about fasting?
Oh, well, here's the number one thing. They think it's a fad diet. It is not a fad diet. It is a healing state you put your body into. Your body was designed to fast. So if you're not fasting, it's not like, oh, I'm not choosing to do that fad diet. You're actually taking this massive healing mechanism out of your healing picture, your health picture. So we have to stop looking at it like a diet and look at it as a therapeutic healing state that every single moment you dip into it, your body is actually starting to build more health and instead of more disease.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think if you just look at cultures around the world as well, most cultures have had fasting built in within them for thousands of years. So this modern idea that, fasting is dangerous, it's, I get, and we've caveated it several times throughout the conversation, but fasting is not dangerous for humans. No. Healthy, vibrant humans, it's definitely not dangerous for, how many people around the world follow the Islamic faith? How many of those people fast for 1 month every single year? Yes, there's some nuances to that fast. It's just incredible, And actually, I mentioned I was at a book festival recently in the Middle East, and I was chatting to this wonderful lady called Sally who lives out there. And she said a couple of things which really resonated with me. One was she was really looking forward to Ramadan. She was saying, I'm really excited. Mm-hmm. And she said, Rongan, you don't know how good a sip of water can taste until you fasted.
Okay, if you loved this video, you're going to want to check out the next video of my food series. On this video, want to talk about the healthy foods that you might be eating that will stop you from a long and healthy life.